Today, we will talk about an important topic, dashboard development. This will be an introductory session, and let's get started. After following this lecture, you will be able to define what a dashboard is and isn't, classify dashboards as strategic, analytical, or operational, identify the quantitative and non-quantitative data dashboards, recognize the 13 common mistakes in dashboard design, apply corrected design choices to real dashboard examples. Everybody wants a dashboard today, but most fail to deliver on their promise. Why dashboards fail? Failure is rarely about technology. It's about poor design. Vendors chase flash and dazzle instead of clarity. Queued gauges and traffic lights lose their appeal within days. So it's about more science than art if you ask me how to develop a dashboard. More simplicity than dazzle. That's what Stephen Few also mentioned, one of the pioneers in the idea of dashboard design concepts. A dashboard's success as communication is a product of design. Software alone won't do it for you. Let's look at what happened, the timeline of dashboards. In 1980s, Executive Information Systems or EIS emerged. They are visionary but ahead of their time. In 1980s, data warehousing or OLAP and business intelligence mature enough to make information usable. Then come late 1990s. Kaplan and Norton's balanced scorecard popularizes the KPI driven management. That's when dashboards were highly needed. In 2001, the Enron scandal drives demand for close performance monitoring. In 2000s, business intelligence vendors rebrand, acquire, or repackage products as dashboards. The vendor definitions tend to be self-validating lists of product features with not real clarity. That is important. We have to understand the difference between actually developing a dashboard and going for the software features. According to Stephen Few's working definition, a dashboard is a visual display of the most important information needed to achieve one or more objectives, consolidated on a single screen so it can be monitored at a glance. In simple words, it's an engaging visual display that effortlessly brings key information together for easy goal monitoring. There are 6 characteristics that separate a true dashboard from an ordinary report. The first characteristic is that a dashboard is displayed on a single screen. All information fits within one eye span, so no scrolling or switching is needed. Since graphics communicate faster and richer than text alone, the dashboards are always a visual display. They are objective driven. So a dashboard shows exactly the information needed to meet specific goals, nothing more. Data appears as summaries or exceptions, not exhaustive detail. Small, clear display elements protect precious screen space, so you can understand details at a glance. Last but not least, a dashboard is tailored to the specific person, group, or function it serves. It is worth pausing to ask, why are dashboards having their moment now rather than in the 1980s when that idea first emerged. A few things converged. High resolution graphics finally make it possible to pack dense, legible information into a small space without it turning into visual mush. Business performance management has put metrics at the center of how organizations run day to day. So there's real organizational appetite for this kind of tool. And critically, we now understand a lot more about visual perception, how the eye and brain actually process information, which gives us a scientific basis for good design rather than just guesswork. Dashboards aren't a complete cure for information overload. Nobody should oversell that. But when they are designing the dashboards well, they genuinely help people spot trends, patterns, and anomalies faster and reason their way toward better decisions. That's the promise we are chasing in this module. Let's look at a broader view of how dashboards can be classified, just so you have the full picture. The role of the dashboard can be strategic, analytical, or operational. Beyond role, you can sort dashboards by the type of data they show, like quantitative versus non-quantitative. You can sort them by how often they refresh, monthly, weekly, daily, even hourly for operational context. Think about the dashboards you may find in airports, for example. You can sort them by interactivity. Is this a static snapshot, or does it update in real time? Or does it let you drill down into details? Let's pause for a moment and think about these examples in your real world examples that you encounter. And you can sort them by how graphics and text are mixed together on the screen. So that's display mix. None of these are wrong ways to think about dashboards, and you will see all of them referenced in industry conversations. But as we discussed, role is the variable that most directly drives design decisions. So that's where we are going to focus our attention for the rest of this discussion. Role, type of data, update frequency, interactivity, display mix. Let's go. The role a dashboard plays drives its design more than any other factor. High-level KPIs for executives. Simple, static, unidirectional snapshots, often monthly or weekly. Rich context and history for analysts with drill down to explore root causes. So those dashboards are analytical. Real-time, detailed monitoring that must grab attention the instant something goes wrong, those are operational. So those are the types of roles you encounter with dashboards. Let's ground this in some real examples of what actually shows up on dashboards. Sales dashboards commonly track bookings, order counts, and pipeline. Finance dashboards, as you can see on the second row, focus on revenue, expenses, and profit. Marketing looks at market share and campaign performance. Fulfillment dashboards track shipping days, backlog, and inventory levels. And HR or IT dashboards might show turnover, open positions, or system downtime. Notice the pattern here. Across all these very different business functions, the underlying data is almost always quantitative. And it's almost always some kind of a summary, a total, an average, occasionally a distribution. That's not a coincidence. Dashboards exist to let you monitor a lot of business activity at a glance, and raw quantitative summaries are simply the most efficient way to compress that information into a small amount of screen space. Whatever domain you are designing for, you will likely be working with measures like these. Here's something crucial that a lot of dashboards get wrong. A number by itself rarely means anything. If I tell you quarter to date sales are 736,502, your first question is probably compared to what? That's where enrichment comes in. And there are two main flavors. Comparison enrichment means showing the number alongside something else. This time last year, the current budget target, a forecast, or even a related measure like order count versus revenue. Evaluation enrichment means explicitly telling the viewer whether a number is good or bad, often through color or simple indicator. So they don't have to make that judgment themselves. One caution here: evaluation indicators work best with just a few distinct states. If you try to encode 5 or 6 gradations of good to bad, you're asking viewers to make fine distinctions their eyes simply aren't built for. Context turns out a lonely number into a story. Now, that is the goal. If you think about non-quantitative dashboard data, not everything worth monitoring is a number. There are simple lists, schedules, entities, and relationships. So the simple list can be top customers, open issues, or tasks that need attention right now. Schedules can be tasks, due dates, and the people responsible for them. Entities and relationships can be people and the processes, or events connected by lines, occasionally showing duration or size. Requiring users to scroll vertically or horizontally to access all information limits their ability to view the complete picture at a glance. That's one of the 13 common mistakes exceeding the boundaries of a single screen that we should avoid when we develop a dashboard. Think about the dashboard that you can see on the screen. An executive hub that displays revenue metrics prominently while placing key operating costs and customer satisfaction graphics further down the page. This requires users to scroll and rely on short-term memory to compare metrics. Now let's look at the second mistake: supplying inadequate context for the data. Presenting raw numbers without benchmarks, historical comparisons, or targets prevents viewers from assessing whether a value is positive, negative, or typical. A widget displaying total sales as 45,000 rupees or dollars lacks context. Success can only be evaluated if the dashboard includes comparative information such as a target or percentage change from the previous month. Take a look at the dashboard content that I have shown you here in this slide. It doesn't make sense. Now, this is a very interesting example. The third common mistake: choosing inappropriate display media. This pie chart is part of a dashboard that displays breast cancer statistics. Look at it for a moment and see if anything seems odd. Pie charts are designed specifically to present parts of a whole, and the whole should always add up to 100%. Here, the slice labeled breasts 13.30%. You can see that. Looks like it represents around 40% of the pie. That's far away from 13.3%. Despite the meaning that a pie chart suggests, these slices are not parts of a whole. They represent the probability that a woman will develop a particular form of cancer. Breast, lung, colon, and 6 types that aren't labeled. This misuse of a pie chart invites confusion. So this is not the way to show your data. The fourth mistake that I want to highlight is displaying excessive detail or precision. Look at the two sections marked in red. The lower right section, this part, lists 4 to 10 decimal digits for each measure. While that level of detail can be helpful in some cases, it probably isn't needed on a dashboard. The section above here shows time down to the second, which also seems unnecessary here. On a dashboard, extra information makes it harder to spot what matters, and that wastes valuable time of the viewer. Now the fifth mistake, choosing a deficient measure. To make a measure meaningful, we need to know exactly what is being measured and the units used. A measure falls short if it does not clearly and efficiently show the message the dashboard viewer needs. Even if a measure is accurate, it might not be the best way to get the point across. For instance, if the viewer only needs to see how much actual revenue differs from budgeted revenue, it is more straightforward to show the variance as 9% and maybe also show the $8,066 difference in this case, instead of listing the actual revenue of $76,934 and the budget revenue of $85,000 and expecting the viewer to do the math. In this case, using a percentage makes the variance easy to understand. The figure here shows this idea in a very difficult way to understand. Although the graph displays actual and budget revenues separately, you need to make sure to show a cleaner version of this. The sixth mistake that I want to highlight is adding unnecessary or meaningless variety into your dashboards. The dashboard here shows that what happens when there is too much variety. You can see all those colors and variety. This kind of clutter forces users to adjust how they read each part of the dashboard, which takes extra time and energy. Take your time and try to understand what is shown here. Adding unnecessary variety to a dashboard is a common mistake. Many people worry that repeating the same type of chart will bore viewers. But using different displays just for the sake of variety can make the dashboard less effective. Always choose the display method that communicates the information best, even if that means using the same type of graph several times. If your dashboard gives people the information they need to do their jobs, they won't mind. They won't mind seeing similar charts. What will frustrate them is having to work harder to find what they need because of random changes in how the data is shown. Consistency helps viewers use the same approach to understand the data, saving them time and effort. The seventh mistake that I want to highlight is using poorly designed display media. Choosing the right way to present your data is about important as this step. You also need to design each part of your graph so it communicates clearly and efficiently without any distractions. Many business graphs and dashboards and technical charts today are not well designed, mostly because few people have learned the basics of good graph design. For instance, look at this chart. It repeats on using some sort of a dial gauge, and we don't have any context. Also, look at this 3D bar chart. It also shows data but with no context, and it's very difficult to understand the type of data and why these colors are used and all the tool tips and other details that you can see. So you need to always look for the right design for the data that you want. Now let's look at the eighth mistake that people do in developing dashboards: encoding quantitative data inaccurately. I'll give you a few moments to think about why this chart is showing like this and what is the mistake. Sometimes graphs showing numbers are designed in ways that give the wrong impression. For example, in this figure, the vertical scale was set incorrectly for a bar graph. Now again, think about this. The length of each bar is supposed to show its value. So the bars for January revenue and costs make it look like revenue is about 4 times higher than the costs. But if you look at the scale, you'll see that revenue is actually less than twice the cost. This happened because the scale starts at $500,000 instead of $0, which is not correct for a bar graph. Now, you have to make sure that you don't do this mistake. The ninth mistake is arranging the data poorly. Dashboards often have to show a lot of information in a small space. If the information isn't organized well, with important details placed where people will notice them and a design that groups related data clearly, the result is a cluttered mess like this. Many dashboards online use little data to avoid careful design, but they still often look messy and thrown together. The goal isn't just to make the dashboard look nice, but to arrange the data to match how people use it. The most important information should stand out. Data needing quick attention should be easy to spot. If some data should be compared, it should be placed and designed to make those comparisons easy. Take a look at this dashboard that shows common problems with poor data arrangement. For example, the top left corner, the most noticeable spot, is used for the vendor's logo and navigation controls. This wastes valuable space. As you look down the screen, the next thing you see is a gauge showing average order size. While this might matter to some, it is probably not the most important information here. This dashboard lacks a clear visual flow or balance because it has a lot of colors as well, and it fails to highlight what matters the most. Also, the bright and red bars above each section with white titles like this grab more attention than needed just to label the displays. This divides the space too much. Finally, the line graphs for order size and profit trends look similar, which makes you want to compare them. That could be helpful, but since they are side by side instead of one above the other, it's hard to compare them closely. This example shows you can't just put information wherever it fits and expect the dashboard to work well. The 10th mistake that I want to highlight is very important to most of us. Highlighting important data ineffectively or not at all. When you look at a dashboard, your eyes should go straight to the most important information, even if it is not the most obvious spot on the screen. The problem with this dashboard is that everything stands out. So nothing really catches your attention. The logo and navigation controls, the buttons on the left, are easy to notice because of where they are and their strong borders. But these are not the data and should not be highlighted. The graphs where the data is shown are all equally bold and colorful, which makes everything blend together and leaves you unsure where to look. Everything on a dashboard matters, but not everything is equally important. That is very important. Not equally important. The viewer's eyes should always be guided to the most important information first. The 11th mistake that most of us do is cluttering the display with useless decoration. We often talk about this when we talk about the extraneous load early on as well, but this is very common. So this unnecessary decoration. Designers might think the artistic touches will attract us to keep us entertained. But even people who like these decorations at first will probably get tired of them soon. For example, the dashboard here looks a lot like an electronic control panel. This design would work well if the goal was to train people to use real equipment through a simulation. However, that is not what a dashboard is for. The graphics used here are just decoration that viewers have to sort through before they can see the actual data. Look at these high intensity colors, and just because these green colors are very dark and prominent, you can't really see the comparison in the data. So that's something that you want to avoid. I'm going to use the same example I used in the previous slide to talk about misusing or overusing color. That is our 12th mistake. When choosing colors, it's important to think carefully about how people see and interpret them. Some colors, like red or orange, stand out and grab attention, while others are cooler and less noticeable. If a color stands out from the usual, our eyes notice it and our minds try to figure out what it means. If two sections of a dashboard use the same color, we naturally connect them. Many people use colors like red, yellow, and green to highlight key data, but this can leave out the 10% of men and 1% of women who are colorblind. So we come to the 13th mistake, designing an unattractive visual display. I won't sugarcoat it. Some dashboards are just plain ugly. When we see them, we want to look away, which is the opposite of what should happen when a screen is meant to give us important information. You might think my earlier warning against unnecessary decoration means I don't care about how dashboards look. But that's not true. If a dashboard is unpleasant to look at, it puts people in the wrong mindset to use it. I'm not saying we should add decorations to make dashboards pretty. Instead, we should focus on displaying the data in a way that looks good without adding anything that distracts or hides it. We'll talk more about this in the coming lectures when we try to design effective dashboards. For the time being, take a look at this messy dashboard that just doesn't look good. The person who made it tried to make it look nice but didn't have the right design. For example, to fill up space, some sections like the graph at bottom right were just stretched out, while shades of gray can work as well as background colors for graphs. This one is simply too dark. The image under the title Manufacturing is an attempt to brighten up the dashboard, but it only distracts from the data and isn't even that nice to look at. If the designer had just followed the principles of simplicity, this dashboard would have been much better, don't you think? Alright, let's begin by looking at common mistakes people make with screen space. The first mistake is splitting data across too many screens. Stephen Few, once looked at a banking dashboard that spread the executive view over 10 screens. Deposits on one, loans on another, risk on a third, but executives need to sell all this information together to spot connections. When you split them up, you lose the quick insights a dashboard should give. The opposite problem is showing too much detail, like timestamps down to the second or financial numbers with 10 decimal places. People making big decisions do not need that. That level of precision is not needed. And all those extra digits just add clutter. Both of these mistakes come from not respecting how little space there is on a single screen. There are also mistakes about meaning, not just layout. One is missing context. If you show a number without any comparison, target or history, people will not know if it is good or bad. Another is using the wrong measure. Few gives the example of a dashboard that shows actual and budgeted revenue as separate bars. So viewers have to do the math themselves. If you want to show how far off budget you are, just display the difference as a percentage. The measure should answer the question the viewer actually has. Not just be technically correct and leave them to figure it out. The last three mistakes are about organization. Poor arrangement is common. Few mentions dashboards where the most important spot, the top left, is taken up by a logo and navigation buttons instead of data. Weak highlighting is another issue. If everything is bold and colorful, nothing stands out and viewers do not know where to look. Useless decoration is also a problem, like textures, gradients, or mascots, anything that distracts the eye before it gets to the data. None of these problems are about technical skill. They are about discipline. The best dashboards are usually the ones where the designer avoided the urge to fill every bit of space. So we have discussed a lot. Let's finish the list of 13 with 2 points that are all about restraint. Color misuse. Red, yellow, and green are tempting because they are clear signals for bad, neutral, and good. But if you use strong colors too much, they lose their impact. Also, about 10% of men and 1% of women are colorblind. So, using only color to show meaning can leave some people out. Plain unattractiveness, it might seem too basic to mention, but an unattractive dashboard can make people less likely to use it. Well, the solution isn't to add decorations. Instead, focus on simplicity, clear typography, and a layout that respects the data. That's what makes a dashboard enjoyable to use every day. Everything we have discussed today leads to one main idea. Good dashboard design matters. It matters more than the technology behind it. Even the best data warehouses can't help if the display doesn't consider how people see and understand information. We have talked about what a dashboard is, how they are grouped by role, what data they show, and 13 common mistakes you can avoid. Try this before we meet again. Find a dashboard you use often, either at work or online, and see how many of the 13 mistakes you can point out. Next time, we'll dig deeper into the science of visual perception for dashboards. The reason behind these things have been already discussed in our previous lectures, so go back and revise. That's when these ideas will really start to make sense. So as we wind up this session, remember these 4 things. Design beats technology. A dashboard's success comes from visual design, not the data platform behind it or the software. One screen, one glance. A true dashboard shows only goal-critical information, consolidated where it can be seen at once. Role shapes design. Strategic, analytical, and operational dashboards each demand a different design approach. Avoid the 13 mistakes. Most features trace back to poor context, wrong charts, clutter, or dishonest scales, not lack of skill. So keep doing good dashboards. Design them effectively.